An automatic 10 years in prison for any illegal alien caught re-entering America. What say you folks? Now, I want to run this by you because this is a proposal that came from former President Trump just last week at a rally. An automatic 10 years. You caught entering America and you get deported. When you get caught coming in a second time, automatic 10 years in prison, no parole, no chance of probation or anything at all. You're going to do 10 years hard time flat out. Do you folks agree with that? I wanted to run this by because I see an issue that could arise from this. Nevertheless, a hell of a lot of people are celebrating this, some being Democrat. There are a lot of Democrats. Certainly got to give a shout out to Texas Governor Greg Abbott and a lesser degree Texas Governor Ron DeSantis for busing and flying those immigrants up north to cities like Chicago and Milwaukee and I believe New York, because you got a hell of a lot of liberals in those cities that are now pissed off that some of these migrants are taking up their resources, being put up in fancy hotels and giving EBT cards and a lot of things that the city inhabitants can't get themselves. So shout out to Texas Governor Greg Abbott for drawing attention in the most draconian of ways. And when I'm talking about sitting them up there during the middle of winter with no clothes on and shit, I mean, he did it, but he really did it awful. But shout out to him. It did work in terms of bringing some liberals around and realizing we got an immigration problem. But I want to ask you folks about the 10-year no chance of parole or probation, because a lot of folks think this is a fantastic idea. Here's my pushback on it. If I'm in Gaza, or better yet, let's use you as an example. If you're in Gaza, you're a Palestinian caught in between the fight between Hamas and Israel, or maybe you're a Ukrainian citizen caught in between the fight between the government of Ukraine and Russia, or perhaps you just live south of the border in Mexico, Guatemala, or one of those other areas, and you're running from the drug cartels, running for your life, or even just coming here to seek a better life. If you get caught coming into America second time, you get 10 years in prison. They're going to house, clothes, and give you, we'll say house, clothes, and feed. We know being incarcerated is not exactly, the Taj Mahal, but at the same time, if you're running for your life, I use the example in Ukraine, I use the example in Gaza, I use the example of running from the cartel. You're talking about events where you could die. If they put you in an American penal institution for the next 10 years, your chance of surviving goes up dramatically as an immigrant. So I want to ask you, do you believe what Trump is doing is a deterrent, knowing that they get 10 years in prison, or it actually could be an incentive to come? Keep in mind, if democracy remains intact, because I know a lot of you folks have your opinion on that, Trump gets 4 more years in the White House. That's max. He's gone in 4 years. So there is a really good chance, or at least a possibility, that after Trump, while you're serving your 10 years, you could get another president in office that might be sympathetic to your cause and not only let you out of prison, but perhaps put you on a path to staying in America. And you have been safe from the bombing in Gaza, the bombing in the Ukraine, or running from the cartel. You've been safe the entire time. They've been providing you with some sort of food and nutrition the entire time. You've been housed the entire time. So you're not on the run, escaping from bombed out building to bombed out building, or running from house to house from the cartel. I want to ask you, do you believe what Trump is proposing is a deterrent or an actual incentive to come here? Me personally, depending on how desperate my situation is, 10 years being protected by the American government might actually be an incentive to come. Certainly if it's for my children. Maybe myself personally, I'm willing to take the risk and remain at home. But if I know I have a child that I don't want going through a potential bombing or a potential, serious violence from sicarios or whatever the hell the cartel may have to offer, I may just say cross the border. At least I know you'll be safe there. I know in 10 years you'll still be alive likely. So I tend to think it actually might be an incentive as opposed to the deterrent that Trump and many of his supporters believe. But I want to know from you folks in the comments, what do you think? You think what Trump is doing is a good thing? It is indeed a deterrent? And also keep in mind, just like we're talking about immigrants taking up resources and costing the American taxpayer, well, if you house them for 10 years, we have to ask the obvious question, who's going to pay for that? If all of a sudden a bunch of them come over here and you're giving them 10 years of house, clothing, feeding, security, and all of that, who's going to pay for it? So keep that in mind. You may not even be escaping any taxpayer dollar expenses, because when they come here illegally, many of them will go under the table, make sacrifices, work under the table, and they actually are financially covering themselves. Most of the folks that come here illegally are not living in fancy hotels and living off of EBT cards and all kinds of government expenses. Most of them come over here and work. They actually come over here and work, and they do it under the table. They're getting paid less than you or I would earn. And taxes are often being taken out of their check that they can't claim at the end of the year because they cannot file taxes. But if you incarcerate them for 10 years, then they are 100% our expense. So I'd like to hear from you on that. Last but not least, in addition to the 10-year prison sentence, Trump is also promising the death penalty for any illegal immigrant that takes the life of an American or a member of law enforcement. Now, taking a life of a law enforcement official, killing a cop or whatever the hell you want to call it, it's been widely popular that even an American citizen that takes the life of law enforcement deserves a death penalty. I think a lot of Americans would agree that it's okay to even take another American's life for doing that. However, there are literally thousands of Americans that get murdered every year by other Americans and they don't receive the death penalty. Most states in America, the ones that do have the death penalty, most of them don't even execute 10 people per year. And we know the murder rate in every state is higher than that. So this would be a penalty that is higher for illegal immigrants than it is for the typical American that commits the same crime. I don't know if that can be challenged in court, because some would say that if you are an illegal, you don't have rights at all. But it is something to consider. You're giving an illegal immigrant that commits the same felony as an American a significantly tougher penalty. I think that could be challenged. I don't know how that works, but you guys let me know in the comments. Do you agree with what Trump is proposing? Or perhaps maybe you feel it's a little bit on the draconian side, and that the 10-year automatic sentence, no probation, no parole, might actually be an incentive to come as opposed to a deterrent? Let your boy know in the comments. As always, feel free to subscribe to the channel, smash that like button. See you in the next video.